People are really fixated on the idea that the 2000s and 2010s brought us into the golden age of television. There are debates that it started as far back as the 1980s and 90s, but the show's frequently given credit for erasing TV's reputation as cinema's inferior little brother are The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, Mad Men, The West Wing, 24, and of course...
I don't know how to use it.
Sticking with the pointy end.
But I have to remind myself, and all of you, that before I became hooked on the latter and died a slow and miserable death inside the last season, there was another show that prepared me for what I could expect in Westeros.
What would you do to hold your wife again?
The late 2000s and early 2010s all of a sudden saw an explosion of period television that amounted to sword fighting and...
Very nudie and Rudy.
The jumping off point seems to be Ridley Scott's Gladiator, which itself was following a trend in the 90s of gritty historical epics popularised by Braveheart.
We've got a better chance of survival if we work together.
Gladiator's popularity helped revive an interest in the sword and sandal genre, which had its heyday in the 50s and 60s. So from that we got films like Troy and 300. The latter is one to look at, serving as rather obvious inspiration for... So, for a brief history lesson, Spartacus was a historical figure in the BC times, who was enslaved by the Romans and trained as a gladiator.
No talking in the kitchen, slave.
After a year, he famously rallied 70 slaves to rebel against their masters and escape, kicking off a thing called the Third Servile War. The story was famously dramatised in the 1960 film Spartacus, starring Kirk Douglas as the dude himself, and there was also a little-known 2004 miniseries on the USA Network, but if I have to be biased, I will say that the third time is the charm.
If one slave spills the blood of his master, all are put to death.
Spartacus Blood and Sand premiered on the Starz network in 2010, instantly drawing attention both for its extreme violence and sexual content.
I've never seen a gladiator.
Specifically, the fact that it wasn't shy about male nudity, same-sex couples, and orgy scenes shot deliberately to make the network go, okay, that's too much.
Terms of interest were outrageous!
It marked shockingly against-type performances for John Hannah and Lucy Lawless as the Sid and Nancy slave masters, who are obviously having the time of their lives.
You're not going to kill me then?
No. My slave is going to kill you.
It was a significant breakthrough for actors Leslie Ann Brandt, Jai Courtney, Katrina Law and Manu Bennett, with half the cast ending up in the Arrowverse later.
Your offer is well received.
It also brought to international attention Welsh-born Australian actor Andy Whitfield in the title role.
We have lived and lost at the whims of our masters for too long.
And, after a critically acclaimed first season and nothing but good press, he was unfortunately diagnosed with cancer.
It just doesn't add up to me.
Although they put the second season on hold to produce a prequel, Gods of the Arena, to give him time to seek treatment, he passed away at the age of 39. With his approval, Liam McIntyre took over the role, and it ran for a respectable 2 more seasons. I'm not going to say that he wasn't a good replacement, or that the remaining seasons themselves weren't of a certain quality, but the Blood and Sand season just has a kind of specialness that really deserves to be talked about more.
Spartacus. My name... No one gives to who you were, Thracian.
The first season follows an unnamed Thracian who deserts the Roman army for... reasons. The Roman official Glaber sells his wife Sura into slavery, but Argai survives his planned arena execution and ends up being bought to be trained as a gladiator.
Blood their ambrosia. The arena, their mountaintop.
Other storylines include Quintus and his wife Lucretia's attempts to climb the social ladder through any means necessary, including glorious frenemyship with Glaber's well-connected wife Ilithia. Lucretia is also desperate to have a child, and has been using the Ludus' champion Crixus to help things along, which is complicated even further when he falls in love with her handmaiden Navia, and a good old forbidden affair ensues.
Did you think she would not notice?
Plus some things involving murder frame-ups, murder cover-ups, and Roman slave one-ups. A lot of ups. As the clothes go down, the bodies and stakes go up.
There is but one path. We kill them all.
The series obviously carries the stylistic influence of 300 and the story structures of Gladiator and Rome, but the format that exists only in the Blood and Sand season, and I guess the Gods of the Arena prequel, shares similarities with another series you wouldn't expect.
And they're off.
No rest for the wicked.
Downton Abbey might seem like night and day compared to a series like this, but a fundamental part of it, like Spartacus, was focusing on a family of upper-class characters and their servants, set in a time where the aristocracy had more power and glamour than ever, and many characters eventually break out of their servile roles in the hopes of a freer way of living. Both shows even cover a rough 2-year period in their first season, and they both started airing in the same year. But the difference comes in where Downton opts for a very nostalgic, rose-tinted view of the aristocracy, portraying the upper class as mostly benevolent, progressive, and exceedingly kind to their servants. And the lower classes are happy to serve, save for the shockingly problematic Irish driver, but we won't go there. Understandably, Downton Abbey continues to get plenty of criticism for its Gone with the Wind-esque nostalgia for the days of the aristocracy.
You are the cowards here, not they!
Spartacus, on the other hand...
We have lived in a dream, and now we must awaken.
The show is the dark twin of Downton Abbey, by focusing on the slaves and gladiators first and foremost. And that wasn't a conventional choice at the time, since period films and shows tended to focus on the privileged and glamorous, with the servants almost as living set dressing.
Stripper, Striker Baron Lasher to the post.
It was notable for Django Unchained and 12 Years a Slave to portray the brutality of slavery at the time of their releases, and the last major film before them to focus on it was maybe Amistad in 1997.
He wished for his freedom.
A betrayal in itself.
Spartacus may amp up the treatment of Roman slaves to be more brutal for the sake of a better story, but it works for the most part.
Because you are a slave. Like me. No!
One thing that stuck out to me on the most recent rewatch is the show's demonstration of how the system sustains itself.
I fight to honor these walls. You fight to leave them.
I mean, a black and white dictatorship that the slaves stand nothing to gain from doesn't make for very interesting storylines.
I accept my place here. I embrace it.
See the conflict between Spartacus and Crixus.
Is there no purpose beyond the blood? No dream beyond the cheering crowd?
The former is a free man only recently enslaved, with a wife and potential future outside of the ludus.
A promise was made. You would find Sir.
The latter has been a slave for over 6 years, but he's risen through the ranks to be celebrated as a champion and has effectively submitted completely because of it.
Do you fear entering the arena with Theocles?
I long for it.
Spartacus too is slowly conditioned and controlled by the promise of reuniting with his wife, and doesn't realise how he's being turned into Quintus's puppet.
You are an honorable man, and will forever bear my gratitude.
As you bear mine.
The show demonstrates how one can get trapped in a gilded cage with the illusion of privilege and the false hope of a better life in the future, and this creates an effective every man for himself situation among the gladiators by pitting them against each other for the sake of glory in the arena, all to keep them divided and prevent them from banding together to rebel.
What fever grips brain that Spartacus would think me to band with him to risk the lives of my men?
And then you see how the gladiators enjoy more privilege than the house slaves.
I have no desire to lie with the woman who has been commanded to do so.
What do you think will happen if I fail such a command?
Although both are treated as property, the gladiators still get some special treatment as local celebrities, and thus are oblivious to what their social inferiors have to deal with.
There is nothing in my possession that was not given to me by Domina.
Spartacus's character development in the latter part of the season is realizing the prison he's been tricked into, and being reminded of his place eventually reminds him of his power.
Join me, brother. Or we shall see the house of Badiatus fall.
Seeing his wife, friend, and other innocents suffer all at the whims of Roman nobles is what motivates him to turn on the system.
I would not see the passing of a brother for the purpose of sport.
I find it really powerful that his motivation in eventually rebelling isn't out of hope that he'll get some kind of narrative reward.
My concern is only for my wife.
At the point of the finale, he's basically lost anything he's ever cared about.
So that Spartacus may have his revenge.
No.
Revenge is a partial motivation, but he's driven by the fact that freedom is a basic human right that should be afforded to everyone.
I would not see another heart ripped from chest, or breath forfeit for no cause.
I kind of like that he's not the most morally pure character either, since he's initially only concerned with getting what he wants and only shows sympathy to a select few, but he grows to see that he can't just F everyone else over for his own desires.
I would not have him dead, nor any slave.
Seeing him develop compassion for his fellow slaves, and turn many rivals into allies is actually a fairly compelling arc in addition to the whole rising through the ranks plot.
Spartacus shows us the way. He's a dog without honor. This house is without honor.
Spartacus isn't the only character that grows along these lines. Crixus and Oenomaus come to see the illusions surrounding all their glory and accolades, but I'd argue that the character development that sticks out most to me isn't any of them, or the rest of the gladiators. It's Naevia.
Wait a moment.
To what purpose?
Need there be one?
This character is introduced as little more than a living prop, barely even speaking, and doesn't enter the plot until Crixus starts noticing her. And that actually parallels how Naevia's life has been.
I did not mean to insult.
Domina awaits.
She's the most prominent house slave character, representing those who were born in captivity and have never known life outside the Ludus.
How long have you served, Domina?
All my life.
The first scene in which she is the focus is Lucretia literally using her as a mannequin, and it's later clarified that her virginity has been preserved so as to be useful in a marriage alliance later, so being treated like property all her life makes the romance with Crixus all the more powerful.
You said love drains a man.
It can give him hope. In the right arms.
It's not just the conflict of what'll happen if Lucretia finds out, but the process of Naevia realizing she's being seen as a person to fall in love with, and to be valued not for what she can get for whoever's using her, but simply for her own worth as a human.
You are my heart. I will never doubt the beating of it again.
Being seen and loved inspires Naevia to rebel in her own little ways, finding her voice and asserting her dignity wherever she can.
You shame me.
You shame yourself with thoughts of imaginary slights.
Leslie Ann Brandt does a terrific job at selling the ingenue slowly finding her power.
I know what I saw.
No, you do not.
It isn't easy to portray a character there as the personification of innocence and goodness, but the effectiveness is demonstrated in the scene where Lucretia discovers the affair. This scene will never not be horrifying to watch.
You alone knew of my feelings for him. And yet you betray me.
Even so, this scene and the episode's ending is actually a victory for Naevia.
I have destroyed us.
Yet live.
Having taken every last bit of abuse from Lucretia, she finds she has nothing else to lose, and so finds her voice.
Crixus never loved you. He did only as commanded.
I also think it's worth mentioning that she's the most prominent non-white woman in the cast, and she's the one to be portrayed as the complete innocent.
You shouldn't look at me in that way.
The act of torturing Naevia is what marks the point of no return for Lucretia, and it's seeing this that motivates Mira to join Spartacus's rebellion. The Vengeance and War of the Damned seasons sadly dropped the ball with what made this character work, and it's not just down to the change of actress, but we're focusing on Blood and Sand here.
I shall see you properly attended.
Blood and Sand adds more women to the traditionally male story and offers plenty in terms of interesting female characters.
If one night is all we have left, I should make the most of it.
Sura is a quite good example of how the wife back home doesn't need to be a boring character, and the show is actually fairly true to history by depicting her as a prophetess who inspires the revolt.
The gods came to me last night, in my sleep.
Mira is a late addition, but makes her presence felt, and her development into rebel fighter is one of the things I liked about the Vengeance season.
We felt she had no place among us. She sought to secure one elsewhere.
And when it comes to our villainesses, I love that Spartacus isn't afraid to let the women just be as evil as the men.
How much longer must I suffer your indignities?
While breath gives life to my command.
With Ilithia, I don't think I've ever gone back and forth between hating and loving a character so often.
Stop laughing.
I mean, within the same scene you're going, oh, getting tricked into sleeping with your husband's arch-enemy? Karma. And then,
Would this not set every tongue in Rome wagging?
Giving the elite bully who arranged it a concrete sandwich? You go, girl. If that's not a triumph of character writing, I don't know what is.
It is a scandal, is it not?
Lucretia, likewise, is the fun kind of scheming noblewoman who often isn't as smart as she thinks, but more than makes up for it with sheer evilness.
My hands are no longer my own, and now you seize my tongue?
I would not have it flap about absent direction.
Viva Bianca and Lucy Lawless really elevate already solid material, and are obviously having a lot of fun doing so.
I will see the tongue ripped from your mouth. Even so ruined, it would yet speak the truth.
It's also quite surprising the amount of restraint shown when it comes to depicting topics that Game of Thrones in particular would be criticised for using just apparently for shock value.
The only gift of chastity is in its removal.
By a man of worth.
The exploitation of slaves by their masters is a recurring theme throughout the series, but I'm always surprised that Spartacus never shies away from how men can be exploited too.
Can he do it again? Make him do it again.
Take the gladiators being pimped out for the pleasure or amusement of Roman nobles.
5 denarii says he doesn't last another 20 strokes.
Or Lucretia's treatment of Crixus, which is shown as exactly what it is. A powerful woman using her authority to take advantage of a man who's essentially unable to say no.
Tell me, Nevia, held no meaning for you.
You ask me to speak with false tongue.
Let's remind ourselves of another show that depicted women forcing themselves on men as funny, empowering, or not that bad. Spartacus, meanwhile, reinforces that exploitation is always bad, regardless of who's doing it. And every bit of exploitation shown in the series is laying the groundwork for a glorious payoff.
Kill them! Kill them all!
The final 2 episodes of Blood and Sand, Revelations and Kill Them All, see all the season's foreshadowings and plot threads suddenly exploding into a magnificent 2 hours of catharsis. Crixus and Navia's affair becoming public, Ilithyia being blackmailed over Licinia's murder, Numerius ordering Varro's death, the truth behind Barca's fate.
Barca purchased his freedom. We wished him well and escorted him through the gates of the villa. Do you understand?
See Navia facilitating on Emmaus's face turn too?
Barca was not freed. Epatiatus took his life.
The spectacle is equal parts horrific and cathartic, as a sort of heroic red wedding.
Lucretia.
It's a great demonstration of setup and payoff across a season, and how the pace should accelerate when a finale comes around, like an avalanche basically.
They've lost mind.
There's enough satisfaction here, while still leaving a couple more loose ends open for the next season to pick up.
You chose vengeance against me over your life.
It's really well done is what I'm saying, and it feels self-contained enough for those who prefer to stop watching the series here.
How many more must die?
Let's see, but what?
Although I've watched the rest, I personally choose to stop my rewatch with Blood and Sand. And yes, it's for wholly biased reasons.
Each to his own fate. And I to mine.
I feel as though an artist passing away before their time can be a strange double-edged sword.
I'm sorry about... Welcome to Denmark.
I don't believe in excessively glorifying someone just because they're no longer with us, and I try not to pretend anyone was better than they were simply because I prefer not to speak ill of them. But while there is an element to that, I feel as if losing someone can create a new kind of perspective, an almost you don't know what you got until it's gone feeling.
So, as for you?
I've only ever seen 2 James Dean films, but both had a profound effect on me, and I can indeed say that this guy had something I wish he'd been able to demonstrate more of. Aaliyah was indeed a groundbreaking singer in her time, and deserves every bit of the recognition she continues to get 20 years on. And Andy Whitfield brought something really special to his role here.
We'll find no argument.
A character that, in the 80s and 90s, would have called for an Arnold type, more about the physique. And he brought that to the table too, but he was also able to find that balance between physicality and the required acting prowess.
I would have desired to meet her and tell her of her husband's worth.
The softness and sensitivity to his performance flows seamlessly with the aggression and intimidation this kind of character needs.
There stands but one between you and her.
It would be all too easy for Spartacus to become the vanilla one, there to be a foil for all the others. But the strength of the acting, as well as the writing and direction, allow that, even up against such a colourful cast of backstabbers and conflicted slaves, Spartacus comes out as the most compelling character.
Every man has his end.
It's pretty rare for my favourite character in a series to be the lead, and while I'll always love Navia and Ilithyia in particular, Spartacus himself still comes out on top for me.
We are clear, Domino.
He's a character I could relate to during my crazy misfit times in pro wrestling, and I was able to see a little of myself in an archetype that was usually pretty alien for me.
The gods and I do not tread common ground.
It's likely because of this that I can't really bring myself to watch the Be Here Now documentary, although I'm sure it's very powerful. And while there's nothing technically bad about the remaining seasons, and there are actually plenty of aspects to like about them, my lack of interest in rewatching them boils down to the simple fact that they don't have Andy.
My glory is but a reflection of my dominance.
You flatter.
I return in kind.
Spartacus is a series that was planned to go on for much longer, and the creators had storylines envisioned for several more years, including some possible feature films, but the War of the Damned season was the last, and had to wrap everything up quite quickly. I'm not sure if that's the reason this series doesn't get talked about more, or it's just the more obvious.
Something I crave more than sleep.
I feel as though mentions of it often touted as a guilty pleasure of so bad it's good quality, like you should feel ashamed for loving it.
It's no easy task to sever a man's head. You must find the right angle.
Yeah, it's graphic and explicit, but that's part of the package.
I have done this thing because it is just!
It was a series that knew its roots were in a genre of films considered lowbrow, more about cheap titillation and escapism, distinct from the big-budget Hollywood epics it couldn't compete with. But you know what? Spartacus found a way to merge the two.
Capua! Shall I begin?
It offered plenty of gratuity and thrills, while also catering to every facet of a potential audience, and it also cast gifted actors in these beefcake roles and ensured they were given good material to work with.
It is done.
The result is a series that is both style and substance, using well-crafted plots and storytelling to enhance the enjoyment of the spectacle.
I gave you the means to accept your fate!
It wasn't afraid to be what it was.
Now you are destroyed by it.
It didn't get lost in its own pretentiousness like a certain other series in its twilight years, but rather it practically screamed, "Yep, I'm trashy AF, but you're gonna love me."
Such things are asked of a champion.
These 13 episodes of Blood and Sand, yes, even the first one, are for me a series that could indeed have it all.
What meaning did you take from it?
A warning.
We're 12 years removed from the first season now, and we'll probably have to wait 20 for a highbrow think piece going, "Hey, this show was quite alright actually," but I'll get a head start and say it now. And for those involved who aren't around to hear that inevitable praise and how much it meant to me especially, well, I can choose to believe he knows anyway.
And together, we shall see Rome tremble!